Hello and welcome. My name is Bethany Merritt, and I've started this channel to create a virtual book club in which we'll discuss feminism and poetry, starting this week with the Confessional Poets of the 1950s, and then jumping forward next week to present day. The goal of this book club is to encourage discussions about your experiences, to provoke shared and new understandings, and to connect with others through the medium of feminist literature. I had every intention of this video actually being a live stream so that I could engage with viewers in real time. However, I've still not been approved for YouTube's live streaming services. So we'll have to adapt for the first week. Hopefully this video should appear as a premiere and it should still have the live chat function. If not, I invite anyone watching to start or join conversations in the comment section. I am brand new to creating YouTube content, but I consume a good bit of it. So I know the vibe that I'm going for. I just don't have the means to achieve it just yet. Again, please expect henceforth that we'll be going live Saturdays at noon. I don't want anyone to feel over encumbered by having to read anything ahead of time, so I picked short poems that we can listen to and digest within the video. No homework necessary over here. So that's my introduction. With my introduction out of the way, I'd love to hear from you. If you could please leave a comment or a chat to let me know where you're coming from a literary context. Do you have a favorite moment in poetry? I'll be covering two significant poets from the Confessionalism movement today. It'll be Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. Are you familiar with either of these poets? If so, let me know. So I'll start with an introduction to confessional poetry. The confessional movement began in the 1950s, and the most defining characteristic of confessional poetry is that it focuses on very intimate and taboo subject matters, such as death, suicide, female rage, and sexual guilt. The genre came about as a literary response to what we've come to know as the modern movement in poetry, which held the belief that a poem should be completely impersonal, that the author's life, feelings, and experiences had no place in the poems that they wrote. Confessional poetry essentially merges the concepts of the author of the poem and the narrator of that poem. When you read a poem by Sylvia Plath and you come across the word I, that I is usually Sylvia Plath and not some separate fictional narrator. So, taking a look at Sylvia Plath, she was born in 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts, and was a significant contributor to the confessional movement. She was excited to contribute to a literary movement which made poetry a personal and emotional experience. She was fraught with depression and struggled with her mental health throughout her entire life. She was one of many tortured souls who created incredible literature through their pain. Her poetry reaches into the recesses of the unconscious, and her work exemplifies the agonizing relationship between pain and creativity. At the age of 17, she wrote, "I'm afraid of getting married. Spare me from cooking 3 meals a day. Spare me from the relentless cage of routine and rote." From a very young age, Plath understood what societal expectations were placed on her because of her womanhood. She dreaded society's obligation to be a man's cook, housekeeper, and pet. Though she feared marriage, she did end up marrying later on in life. She married another famous poet, Ted Hughes. They had 2 children together, but ultimately split because Ted had an affair. The first poem by Sylvia Plath that I'd like to share with you all was written a few days after their split. It's called The Applicant. I'll get that going.
First, are you our sort of person? Do you wear a glass eye, false teeth, or a crutch, a brace or a hook, rubber breasts or a rubber crotch, stitches to show something's missing? No, no. Then how can we give you a thing? Stop crying. Open your hand. Empty? Empty. Here is a hand to fill it and willing to bring teacups and roll away headaches and do whatever you tell it. Will you marry it? It is guaranteed to thumb shut your eyes at the end and dissolve of sorrow. We make new stock from the salt. I notice you are stark naked. How about this suit? Black and stiff, but not a bad fit. Will you marry it? It is waterproof, shatterproof, proof against fire and bombs through the roof. Believe me, they'll bury you in it. Now your head, excuse me, is empty. I have the ticket for that. Come here, sweetie, out of the closet. Well, what do you think of that? Naked as paper to start, but in 25 years she'll be silver, in 50, gold. A living doll everywhere you look. It can sew, it can cook, it can talk, talk, talk. It works. There is nothing wrong with it. You have a hole, it's a poultice. You have an eye, it's an image. My boy, it's your last resort. Will you marry it? Marry it, marry it.
So this poem is a critique on gender norms, how society expects women to bend to their husbands and over time to lose all sense of selves in order to be the perfect wife, and also how society expects men to be breadwinners of their households. So, certainly throughout and after her failed marriage to Hughes, Sylvia felt as though her worst fears about marriage came true. Another prevalent feature throughout Sylvia Plath's poetry, and in her life as well, is a strained relationship with her parents. Her father died when she was very young, and Daddy remains one of her most well-known poems. I'd like to look, however, at Medusa. It's a poem about her mother. So I'll go ahead and share that now.
Medusa. Off that land spit of stony mouth plugs, eyes rolled by white sticks, ears cupping the sea's incoherences, you house your unnerving head, god ball, lens of mercies. Your stooges plying their wild cells in my keel's shadow, pushing by like hearts. Red stigmata at the very center, riding the rip tide to the nearest point of departure, dragging their Jesus hair. Did I escape, I wonder? My mind winds to you, old barnacled umbilicus, Atlantic cable, keeping itself, it seems, in a state of miraculous repair. In any case, you are always there, tremulous breath at the end of my line, curve of water upleaping to my water rod, dazzling and grateful, touching and sucking. I didn't call you at all. Nevertheless, you steamed to me over the sea, fat and red, the placenta paralyzing the kicking lovers. Cobra light, squeezing the breath from the blood bells of the fuchsia. I could draw no breath, dead and monoless, overexposed like an X-ray. That martyr's smile, that loony pivot, that stellar jellyhead, and a million little suckers loving me. Who do you think you are? A communion wafer? Blubbery Mary? I shall take no bite of your body, bottle in which I live, ghastly Vatican. I am sick to death of hot salt. Green as eunuchs your wishes hiss at my sins. Off, off, Ely tentacle. There is nothing between us.
So throughout that poem, Plath talks about her mother in body parts, like a head, eyes, hair, placenta, tentacles, cells, yet never a whole person. She mentions crossing the ocean, which Plath's own mother did to show support after the separation between Plath and Hughes, as they lived in England at the time. What was likely meant to show that, Sylvia Plath's mother wanted to show her comfort and support, but it left Plath feeling stifled, dependent, and like she was completely out of control. This poem clearly shows that Plath had some mommy issues that she struggled with. So next we'll be looking at Anne Sexton. Sexton was a contemporary of Sylvia Plath. They were friends and colleagues. Sexton's work focused on raw, unprocessed feelings. Writing poems, according to Sexton, was supposed to be a shock to the senses. She said it should almost hurt. Much like Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton also suffered from severe bouts of depression, and ultimately, just like Sylvia Plath, succumbed to that depression in the end. I cannot start a feminist book club without talking about the abortion, but of course, that one I couldn't find as an audio, so I'll just pull it up here on the screen for you to read. Let's see. The abortion. Somebody who should have been here is gone. Just as the earth puckered its mouth, each bud puffing out from its knot, I changed my shoes and then drove south. Up past the Blue Mountains, where Pennsylvania humps on endlessly, wearing like a crayoned cat its green hair. Its roads sunken in like a gray washboard, where in truth the ground cracks evilly, a dark socket from which the coal has poured. Somebody who should have been born is gone. The grass as bristly as and stout as chives, and me wondering when the ground will break, and me wondering how anything fragile survives. Up in Pennsylvania, I met a little man, not Rumpelstiltskin at all at all. He took the fullness that love began. Returning north, even the sky grew thin, like a high window looking nowhere. The road was as flat as a sheet of tin. Somebody who should have been born is gone. Yes, woman, such logic will lead to loss without death. Or say what you meant, you coward, this baby that I bleed. So, in the 1960s, Sexton was writing about traveling south, crossing state lines to Pennsylvania, where presumably abortions were legal. All throughout the poem, Sexton makes whimsical metaphors alongside jolting visual imagery to encapsulate her conflicting feelings about her abortion. I find this poem to be incredibly successful at articulating the raw emotions that a woman would likely go through during such an experience. She's talking to herself in the poem at the end. One moment she's comforting herself, the next she's berating herself with horrific insults and trying to like cut herself down to her core. I think that's super relevant to not just how one might think about themselves in the instance of having an abortion, but I know my inner critic is talking to myself like that, like all the time. So even though I haven't necessarily been in this situation, I can definitely resonate with that harsh inner critic. Following the juxtaposition of whimsical metaphors and heavy sentiments, let's take a listen to Anne Sexton's Her Kind. Wrong button. So sorry. 1 second. That's the one we want.
Her kind. I have gone out, a possessed witch haunting the black air, braver at night, dreaming evil. I have done my hitch over the plain houses, light by light, lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind. A woman like that is not a woman quite. I have been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carving, shells, closets, silks, innumerable goods. Fixed the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, Dryden, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright roots, survivor where your flames still bite my thigh, and my ribs crack where your wheels whine. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind.
So, Sexton does not at all relate to the stereotypical woman. She feels very other and discriminated against for being other. She feels crazy, wild, persecuted, just like the woman from the Salem witch trials. So, let me know what you think about these poems in the comments below. These women lifted up their voices through their poetry, and they made extraordinary works out of their very real pain and experiences. Mental health struggles, suicidal ideation, abortion, female rage were all very real factors that these women used to craft their literary works. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. Next week, we'll take a look at Rupi Kaur and Amanda Lovelace to see how feminism in poetry is expressed in current times. So, thank you so much for watching. Apologies that this is not a live stream format, but I'll still be in the live chat of the premiere, ready to have any sort of conversations that may come up. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.